Michael, a 15-year-old boy, was the kind of kid who did everything to avoid drawing attention. Tall, thin, and always slouched. He walked with quick steps and his gaze fixed on the floor, as if he wanted to disappear in the school hallways. Coming from a modest family, he had lost count of the times he had been laughed at for wearing the same worn-out sneakers or clothes that looked secondhand. Michael had a unique sensitivity and a quiet intelligence. As he passes by the group of popular students near his locker, he hears the first laughs.
Hey, here comes Michael. Guys, he never gets tired of that retro look. Isn't that right?
Michael, man, I didn't know 90s fashion was back. Maybe the school should take up a collection for you, right?
Michael feels his face heat up. He pretends not to hear, but the comments get louder. Their voices echo in his mind as he tries to turn the combination on his locker, his hands trembling slightly. Finally managing to open his locker, he quickly grabs his books, trying his best not to make eye contact. But before he can close the door, a paper is shoved through the crack, falling directly at his feet. He slowly unfolds it and reads, in big, bold letters, "You're a joke. Stay home next time." He crushes the note tightly and shoves it into the bottom of his pocket, feeling a lump in his throat. During the first class, Michael struggles to pay attention to the teacher, but Tyler and Jack's voices still echo in his mind. He looks down at his own shoes, stained and a bit worn at the edges, and feels shame take over him. His family can't afford new clothes. He knows that. Yet, the weight of constant comparisons and contempt fills him with doubt.
Maybe they're right. Maybe I really don't belong here.
He clenches his fists, feeling the familiar sense of helplessness, which makes him want to shrink even smaller, to disappear. Bowing his head, he pretends to read the book, but his mind is far away. At lunch, Michael walks to the farthest table in the cafeteria, where he usually eats alone. He takes out his lunch, trying to ignore the noise around him. But it doesn't take long before he hears Tyler's voice approaching again.
Wow, Michael, you really don't get tired of being alone, huh? Or is it that no one wants to sit with you?
I heard that isolated people tend to talk to themselves. Maybe he has imaginary friends, like in his head.
The two burst into laughter, and Michael pretends nothing happened. He keeps his eyes fixed on his lunch, barely tasting his food. Each of their words piles up like bricks in his mind, making it harder to ignore.
They don't know anything about me. Nothing about who I am. But is that really all I am to them?
Afternoons were the hardest time for Michael. The school seemed to empty its hallways, but the voices of other students still echoed in his head, repeating the cruel words of the day. That afternoon in particular, he couldn't bear the thought of going straight home to face the heavy silence of the living room, where his mother worked tirelessly to keep up with the bills. He didn't want her to see him exhausted and worry about his problems too. As he walked, Michael passed by the music room door. It was open, which was rare, and a soft sound escaped from it, like a calling. Curious and looking for any distraction to ease his anguish, he stopped for a moment and leaned in to peek. In the corner of the room was a piano. It wasn't a luxurious instrument with several yellowed keys and a worn wooden body, but something about it attracted him. He looked around and, seeing no one nearby, decided to go in. The music room was different from other spaces in the school. It was darker, but in a cozy way, and the air carried the smell of old wood mixed with the faint aroma of forgotten sheet music. Michael approached the piano, almost reverently, running his hand over the keys as if afraid to wake something that had been sleeping.
So, this is what it looks like up close.
He sat down on the bench and pressed a key gently. The sound that emerged was off-key, almost painful to the ears, but still managed to do something that nothing else had that day. It brought a smile to Michael's face. He chuckled softly to himself and played a few more notes, exploring the feel of each key under his fingers. As his touches became more confident, he began to play a simple melody, something he had heard on an old cassette tape at home, one of the few things left by his father before he left. The music, even out of tune, filled the space around him, and for a brief moment, Michael felt as if the world was suspended, just him and the piano, free from the weight of judgments. In the following days, Michael returned to the music room whenever he could. He had discovered a place where no one could find him and, consequently, couldn't hurt him. There, he wasn't the poor kid or the weird one. In the silence of the room, he was simply Michael, a boy learning to play piano, discovering a passion that grew each day.
Maybe I can be more than what they say. Here I feel like I can be anything.
He began spending entire breaks in the room, practicing scales he learned by ear and imitating songs he vaguely remembered. His fingers were clumsy, and he made many mistakes, but it didn't matter. Each mistake was an opportunity to learn, and each melody gave him a sense of control he had never had before.
Maybe I'm good at this. With time.
However, Michael's journey wasn't easy. Without technical knowledge, he often grew frustrated when he couldn't play the songs the way he wanted. His hands would become stiff and sore, and anger at his own limitations began to surface. In a fit of frustration, he hit the keyboard with his fists, producing an unpleasant sound that made him wince.
Damn, I'll never be able to play right. Maybe it's just a foolish dream.
He almost decided to quit, but as he got up to leave, he looked back and saw the piano there, still waiting for him. It was as if the instrument was challenging him not to give up. Taking a deep breath, he sat down again and started over, this time more slowly, accepting the mistakes as part of the process. He knew he couldn't be perfect immediately, but for the first time in his life, he was willing to try. The music didn't judge, didn't mock his failures. It only gave him the chance to start again always. In the weeks that followed, Michael learned to lose himself in the piano, and the piano became his ultimate refuge. He began to improvise, creating his own melodies, small fragments of emotions he didn't know how to express in words. Instead of focusing only on the notes, he concentrated on the feeling behind them, translating his pain, his anger, and occasionally, his joy into music. As his skill grew, Michael started experimenting with more complex chords, studying old sheet music left in the room, and watching videos on the internet when he was home. He developed his technique in secret, with an almost obsessive dedication.
I never thought something could make me feel so free.
One day, while Michael was deeply engrossed in a melody, he was surprised by the voice of his music teacher, Ms. Turner. She was standing by the door, a slight smile on her face.
You have a good ear for music, you know.
Michael froze, his hands still on the keys. No one had ever heard him play before, and he feared being reprimanded for using the room without permission.
I was just messing around. No need to kick me out or anything.
Relax, I'm not going to kick you out. On the contrary, I was impressed by your dedication. Have you thought about signing up for the school talent show?
The question caught Michael by surprise. He didn't know about the competition, but the idea of performing in public terrified him. Even so, the possibility of showing everyone what he was capable of freeing himself from others' expectations, was tempting.
Competition. I don't know if I'm good enough.
Talent isn't measured only by what you already know, but by how much you're willing to learn and grow. Think about it.
The next morning, Michael got up with his mind racing, replaying his conversation with Ms. Turner. As he walked to school, he tried to push aside the idea of entering the competition. He knew how hard it would be. The judging looks, the whispers, the possible ridicule. But at the same time, something new was stirring within him. It was as if a small flame had been lit, and now he couldn't ignore it. When he arrived at school, he noticed a talent show poster in the main hallway. It was colorful and eye-catching, impossible to miss. "Come show your talent," it read in big letters, next to images of microphones, musical instruments, and dancers. The competition was 3 weeks away, and Michael felt a chill in his stomach just thinking about getting on stage.
It would be crazy. Me signing up for a competition? They'd laugh at me before I even played the first note.
But at the same time, he knew this might be his only chance, a challenge he could choose to face rather than one imposed by others. As he stood in front of the poster, he heard familiar laughter. Tyler and Jack, the same ones who tormented him, approached and noticed his hesitation.
Hey, Michael, thinking of signing up for the talent show? What kind of talent would you have? Staying silent?
Oh, maybe he could do a magic trick and disappear from the stage. That would already be a show.
Michael tried to ignore them, but their words cut deep. He knew that if he really decided to participate, he'd face even more taunts. They walked away laughing, but the doubt kept pounding in his head. He wanted to prove to himself that he was more than the jokes and labels, but the fear of failing in public was paralyzing.
I don't even know if I'm good enough. What if they're right?
Later, during lunch break, Michael went straight to the music room. He sat down at the piano and let his fingers slide over the keys, seeking some comfort. Music had always calmed him, and at that moment, he needed that peace more than ever. As he played, he closed his eyes and imagined the scene. Himself on stage, the audience silent, absorbing each note. He imagined the emotion rising within him, the freedom to express himself without fear. For the first time, as he pictured himself playing, he felt a strange sense of belonging.
What if I can do this? What if I can? Just once.
He opened his eyes and took a deep breath. Determined, he left the room and went back to the talent show poster. This time, he took the sign-up form and filled it out with trembling but steady hands. When he finished, he looked at the paper as if it were a ticket to a new life.
It's time to find out who I really am.
In the following days, Michael devoted every free moment to practicing on the piano, creating his own version of a classical piece he knew by heart. He wanted his performance to be unique, something no one would expect from someone like him. Each day, his confidence grew, but along with it, a rising anxiety. He knew that if other students found out about his sign-up, the taunts might worsen. During a lunch break, Ms. Turner found him in the music room, absorbed in his practice. She paused for a moment to watch him, and at the end of the piece, clapped softly, which startled Michael.
You've been working hard, Michael. I can see that music means something special to you.
It's like I can be myself, without anyone telling me who I should be.
And that's exactly what you should bring to the stage. Music is your truth, Michael. You just need to believe in yourself.
Her words echoed in his mind. Her encouragement was support he had never imagined receiving, and it gave him the courage to continue. He knew the road to the competition would be difficult, but he was determined to keep moving forward. One afternoon, as Michael was leaving the music room, he ran into a small group of students who were talking about the competition. Upon hearing that he planned to participate, they started laughing.
You? Michael? Where did you get the idea that you have talent for this?
It'll be quite a show. I can't wait to see you fail live.
Michael felt his face flush, but this time, he didn't let the taunts shake him as much as before. He knew these comments were just a reflection of others' ignorance. They had no idea how he felt when playing, of the dedication he put into each note. Still, those words weighed on him, and he realized that the fear of judgment was still there, firm as an invisible barrier. As he walked away, he found himself lost in doubt again. The idea of facing the audience, his peers, the possible humiliation, it all seemed too frightening. But when he got home, he decided that even with the fear, he would keep practicing. Each second at the piano was an opportunity to grow, and each day, he felt closer to the dream of performing and showing everyone what he was capable of. During one of his practices, Ms. Turner suggested that he try adding singing to his performance. Michael had never thought about it, and just the idea of singing in public made his heart race. But after hearing her, he began to consider it. Maybe singing could make his performance even more authentic, closer to what he truly felt.
Singing. I don't know if I can.
I believe you can. I've heard you hum the lyrics as you play, and I know your voice has something special. Think of it as one more way to express yourself.
He was silent, but her words resonated in his mind. Singing would be another challenge, but it was also a chance to make his performance even more powerful. That night, as he practiced, he began to sing softly, just for himself. The feeling was liberating, and each note he sang seemed to bring new life to the melody he was learning. It was as if the music was finally complete.
Maybe I really can do this. Maybe.
With the competition drawing nearer, Michael devoted himself like never before. He spent every break in the music room, rehearsing each note and word to perfection, trying to shield himself against fear and criticism. He was determined to show everyone and himself that he was more than everyone believed. Music was his only truth, and he would do everything he could to make it speak louder than any cruel word. That night, as he prepared for bed, he looked at the imaginary piano in his mind, visualizing himself on stage and facing everyone's gaze. He took a deep breath, still scared, but for the first time felt something different. The fear was there, but mixed with a spark of hope and strength he didn't even know he had.
They might laugh now, but on stage, only I and the music will exist.
He knew he was ready to face the challenge. The next morning, Michael arrived at the music room, already eager to practice. But when he pressed the keys, a strange and out-of-tune sound filled the room. He tried a few other notes, but the dissonance was clear. The keys were out of order. Some didn't respond, while others made loud, irritating sounds.
It can't be. Yesterday it was fine. How did this happen?
The situation was unusual, but he knew that some people might be willing to sabotage him. He remembered the looks Tyler and Jack had cast his way, and internally began to suspect that this was no mere coincidence. Still, he decided to focus and see what he could do with the notes that were still in tune. He wouldn't let this obstacle shake his determination.
If they think this will make me give up, they're wrong.
Later, as he walked through the hallways, Michael noticed strange looks from other students. Tyler and Jack were leaning against their lockers, whispering and laughing at something on their phones. As soon as Michael passed by them, Tyler grabbed his shoulder, blocking his way.
Hey, I heard you're training for the competition. I'm curious to know what talent you think you have. It'll be hilarious.
We even have a betting pool. You're in the lead, but for last place. Cool, right?
Michael felt his face flush and his muscles tightened. He wanted to respond, but he knew any reaction would fuel them. Instead, he took a deep breath and stepped aside, trying to walk away.
They can laugh, do whatever they want, but they don't know what this means to me.
As he walked away, he felt frustration growing inside him, but he remembered Ms. Turner's words. Music is your truth. He promised himself he would stay focused, even if the world around him was against him. At the end of that day, Michael stayed late in the music room, fixing what he could and trying to clear his mind of the comments he'd heard. He was focused on playing the keys gently when Ms. Turner walked in.
Michael, I heard about what happened with the piano. I'm sorry about that.
It's fine. I just hope I can play well on the day of the competition, even if they try to bring me down.
The teacher looked at him with pride and admiration. She knew that what Michael was facing was something few could understand, a kind of courage that arose despite fear and insecurity.
You have something they'll never understand, Michael. What matters is that you stay true to who you are. Keep believing in your talent. Remember, it doesn't matter how many times you fall. What counts is how willing you are to get back up.
Those words filled Michael with renewed energy. He knew this wouldn't be the last sabotage, but the teacher's support gave him the strength to continue, showing him that at least to one person he had value. The next day, while eating alone at a table in the cafeteria, he once again felt the curious and mocking stares around him. Amy and Chris, two classmates, passed by him and didn't miss the chance to provoke him.
Look at you, Michael. So quiet. Do you really think anyone will want to hear you on stage?
Yeah, maybe on a circus stage. I think that's the only place that would suit you.
He remained silent, but inside, he was shaken. It wasn't easy hearing so many cruel words, especially knowing that, in their eyes, he would never be good enough. But something within him refused to give in to humiliation. He finished his lunch and left the cafeteria in silence, knowing he couldn't lose focus. In the days that followed, Michael returned to his intensive practice routine. Every time he sat at the piano, he remembered the taunts, the laughter, and the harsh words. Instead of discouraging him, these memories drove him to play with more emotion and intensity. It was as if each note was a silent response to everyone who doubted him.
This is mine. They can't take this from me.
Ms. Turner helped him tune the piano and even brought him new, challenging sheet music to help him expand his technique. The time he spent playing was an escape for his soul and preparation for the stage. He knew he would need all his skill and confidence to face the audience, but he was determined to keep going, no matter the obstacles. During one practice session, Ms. Turner suggested again that he sing to complement his performance. Michael hesitated, but after reflecting on her words, he decided to try. He started singing softly, letting the words flow along with the melody. Hearing his own voice mix with the sound of the piano, he felt something powerful, something he had never felt before, a kind of confidence that only music seemed to give him. The idea of sharing that side of himself with the audience still scared him, but it also gave him a new layer of strength.
They may laugh, but on stage, it'll just be me and the music.
A few days before the competition, Michael found a note in his locker. It was a short, direct message, written in large letters. "Don't think you'll make it. You're just another loser." He knew instantly it was Tyler and Jack's doing, but this time, something inside him changed. Instead of feeling anger or sadness, he felt a silent kind of challenge, a motivation that went beyond anything they could understand.
If they want me to give up, I'll prove them wrong.
The note, rather than discouraging him, solidified his determination. He spent his last rehearsal that afternoon, singing and playing like never before, mentally preparing himself for the moment he would stand before the audience. As his fingers glided over the piano keys during that final night of practice, he visualized the stage, the audience, and felt his heart race with a mixture of fear and excitement. For the first time, it didn't matter what others thought. Michael knew that moment would be his, and he would live it to the fullest. It was the day of the competition, and the school was busier than ever. Michael arrived early, carrying a mix of anxiety and excitement. The voices and laughter in the hallways seemed louder than usual, and the constant buzz about the competition heightened the tension. Michael's hands were sweaty, and his heart was racing. The presence of his classmates, all talking about their expectations, made him feel small, but he tried to focus on his music, as he had practiced so intensely. He held his registration form tightly, his name carefully written, and took a deep breath to keep his confidence. While Michael waited in line for the final preparations, Ms. Turner appeared. She approached him and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder.
Michael, remember, everything you've done so far has been more than just preparation. You turned each note into a part of yourself, and no one can take that away from you.
I just hope I don't mess it up. The stage, the people. I know they're expecting me to fail.
Don't think about them. Close your eyes and focus on what the music means to you. Today is your moment, and I'm sure you're going to show everyone who you really are.
Her words calmed him a bit. Michael took a deep breath, trying to absorb the encouragement. He knew Ms. Turner was right. What mattered was the music and what it represented to him. The feeling that she believed in him gave him the strength he needed to move forward. The competition began, and Michael watched from the side of the stage as other students performed. Some were clearly talented, with performances that delighted the audience and drew applause. Others, known for being popular at school, received cheers and words of encouragement from friends. The pressure increased, and Michael felt a lump in his throat as he waited for his turn. Tyler, who would be performing a guitar piece, passed by him, smirking.
I hope you're ready to be the comedy act of the night, Michael. After me, it's going to be hard for anyone to take you seriously.
Michael clenched his fists but stayed silent. He knew that if he wanted to conquer this challenge, he needed to keep his mind focused and ignore the provocations. Still, seeing Tyler and other contestants so confident made his insecurity grow. He looked at the piano on stage and wondered if he'd be able to stay calm in front of everyone. As the competitors performed, Michael tried to calm himself by remembering the intense practices, the moments when music saved him from humiliation and helped him find a refuge. He closed his eyes and imagined being alone in the music room, playing without the weight of looks or judgments.
I've been through so much to get here. I can't let fear win now.
He took a deep breath, recalling Ms. Turner's advice. This was his truth, his story, and above all, an opportunity to show that he was more than everyone thought. He decided that when he was on stage, he would play not only for himself, but for everyone who had never believed he could do something extraordinary. Finally, his turn came. Michael walked to the piano, feeling the weight of every stare. There was a murmur in the audience and some muffled laughter, probably from classmates mocking him. Feeling his heart pounding, he settled onto the bench and looked at the keys in front of him, seeking comfort in their familiarity.
Just me and the music. Nothing else matters.
He positioned his fingers over the keys, ignoring the world around him. He took one last deep breath, and as he exhaled, he began to play. The first notes came out soft and delicate, echoing through the auditorium with unexpected clarity. The previously restless audience began to quiet down, intrigued by the depth of the melody Michael had chosen. As he progressed through the music, Michael felt more confident. With each note, his anxiety was replaced by a sense of freedom. The auditorium was completely silent. His classmates who had previously mocked him were now in shock, unable to believe that Michael could play with such intensity. Their expressions of surprise were visible, and even Tyler, standing at the side of the stage, looked disconcerted. When he finished the last note, Michael remained still for a few seconds, breathing heavily. He looked at the audience, still silent, and felt a chill down his spine, fearing his performance had been a failure. But then, the unexpected happened. Applause began, growing in volume and enthusiasm. He heard cheers and applause, and as he looked at the audience, he saw expressions of admiration, including faces that once showed scorn. Among those giving a standing ovation was Ms. Turner, with a proud smile, her eyes gleaming with emotion. The impact of his performance was clear. Michael hadn't just played a song, but had left a mark on those who listened. For the first time, he felt truly seen and respected. As Michael left the stage, he crossed paths with Tyler, who looked at him in silence. Tyler's face showed a mix of emotions, surprise, maybe even a hint of respect. Michael realized he didn't need a confrontation. The music had been his answer, and in that moment, he was no longer the shy, humiliated boy he used to be.
Well, it was better than I expected.
Thank you, Tyler. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Without waiting for a reply, Michael continued walking. He knew that victory was his and his alone. A feeling of accomplishment and peace grew within him, and he felt that, regardless of the results, this was the first step toward the person he always wanted to be. It was the eve of the contest's grand finale, and Michael already felt the weight of expectation in every thought. He spent the afternoon at school putting the final touches on his performance, perfecting each note and each passage. At the end of the day, as the quiet of the music room settled in, he was left alone with the piano, playing at a slower pace, trying to calm himself, though he could feel his heart pounding intensely.
What if everything goes wrong? What if, in the moment, I freeze and mess it all up? What if I'm just a failure?
On his way home, the air felt heavy. The streetlights passed by in flashes, and Michael walked slowly, lost in thought. The voices of his classmates still echoed in his mind, all the harsh words, the laughter, and the disdainful looks. He began to wonder if it had been a good idea to enter the competition. It was as if all the confidence he had built was starting to crumble.
Maybe I aim too high. Maybe they're right.
He remembered the rehearsals, the long hours spent alone, and how music had always been a refuge for him. But now, as he imagined the crowded stage and all eyes on him, he felt vulnerable. The possibility of failing in public was terrifying, and he started envisioning every possible scenario in which he might lose control. When he arrived home, Michael tried to hide his nervousness, but his mother noticed the unease on his face. She watched him carefully, understanding the signs of worry in her son.
Are you okay, Michael? Seems like there's something weighing on you.
Michael hesitated. He didn't want her to know just how nervous he was, but her gaze held a deep understanding that made him feel comfortable enough to open up.
Tomorrow is the competition. And I don't know, Mom. What if all of this has been for nothing? I just wanted to show I could do something special. But what if I can't?
Son, you've always had a courage that few people have. When I see you play, I can tell how much the music transforms you. This competition isn't just about winning. It's a chance for you to show yourself who you really are.
She held his hand, squeezing it lightly.
It doesn't matter what happens tomorrow. You've already won, Michael. The person you've become is something to be proud of, and no one can take that from you.
Her words brought him unexpected relief, as if they lifted some of the weight he was carrying. He knew that, to her, he would always be someone special, regardless of the competition's outcome. That comfort was what he needed to remind himself that his journey was, in itself, a victory. The next morning, early on, Michael decided to do one last practice in the music room. He wanted to make sure he was prepared, that every note was in harmony with his voice. As he played, he closed his eyes and focused, allowing the music to flow naturally, as if he were truly performing for an audience. The room was empty and silent, and in that moment, he felt a refreshing calm. It was as if all the pressure had dissipated, and all that remained was him and the piano. At the end of the piece, he slowly opened his eyes, feeling more centered. Maybe he couldn't predict what would happen on stage, but he knew he had given it his all. Before leaving the music room, Miss Turner appeared, as if she had been waiting to see him. She noticed Michael's serious expression and knew he was battling his nerves.
Michael, tomorrow is an important day for you. Remember, it's not just a competition. It's a chance to share who you are with the world.
I'm afraid of failing, and that everyone will laugh at me.
Her words reassured him. Michael knew his teacher believed in him in a way that no one else did, and that gave him the strength to face the challenge. On the morning of the competition, Michael woke up before his alarm. He felt a strange calm, as if all doubts and fears had been replaced by a quiet determination. He dressed carefully, chose clothes that made him feel comfortable, and as he looked in the mirror, he saw a more mature version of himself. It was as if everything he had been through had transformed him from within. As he left the house, he felt a final flicker of nervousness but took a deep breath, and instead of trying to ignore it, he embraced that feeling. He knew that fear was part of the experience and that, in some way, it made it even more real. When Michael arrived at school, he noticed that the atmosphere was different. There was an energy in the air, an excitement that filled the hallways. Students gathered, talking about the competition, and he overheard snippets of conversations about the favorites to win. It wasn't long before he spotted Tyler and his friends, whispering and laughing as they watched him.
Look who's here. The star of the show. Hope you're ready to be the highlight of the failure.
Michael didn't respond. Tyler's provocations no longer affected him as they used to. He knew the real challenge was about to happen, and that, to face it, he needed all his concentration. He walked past the group, keeping his focus on what truly mattered. Backstage in the auditorium, Michael felt the weight of the moment intensify. It was his turn to perform, and his sweaty hands revealed the mixture of anxiety and expectation he was trying to contain. He watched as the other competitors returned from the stage, some with victorious smiles, others visibly shaken, but all were greeted with applause and encouraging words from friends. When his name was called, Michael felt a chill run down his spine. He walked to the piano under the bright stage lights, his heartbeat mingling with the murmurs of the audience. As he approached the piano bench, the auditorium seemed to fill with muffled sounds, whispers, and discreet laughter. It was clear that many didn't believe he could truly impress them. He looked at the audience, trying to locate a familiar face, and saw Ms. Turner, who gave him a reassuring smile. A bit further, his mother sat with a gentle, hopeful look that gave him strength. He knew that, regardless of what others thought, there were people there who believed in him. Sitting at the piano, Michael took a deep breath and let his fingers rest on the keys, absorbing the absolute silence that now dominated the auditorium. With one last sigh, he began to play. The first notes were soft, creating an enveloping melody that filled every corner of the auditorium. His choice of music was simple but carried emotional depth, something he knew would make the listeners feel every note. As the chords progressed, he allowed himself to close his eyes, transporting himself to the familiarity of the music room where he practiced alone. At that moment, there was no audience, no judgment, just him and the music. With the rhythm growing, the intensity of his performance captivated the audience, and even those who once mocked him now watched in silence. As the music reached its peak, Michael gathered the courage to execute the boldest part of his performance. With a deep breath, he began to sing. His voice, soft and full of emotion, blended with the melody of the piano, creating an intense and unexpected atmosphere. He sang about struggle, about feeling lost, and finding strength within himself. Lyrics that reflected his own internal battles. The audience, already silent, now seemed completely captivated. Surprised looks turned toward him, and Michael felt that, finally, people were seeing more than appearances or labels. His voice conveyed every pain, every hope, and every triumph, and he left it all on the stage, exposing his soul in every verse.
Inside of me, there's something brighter, on the flame that never fades. And no matter how much they say I'm nothing, I know who I am, and that's what keeps me going.
Those words represented everything he felt and had never had the courage to say out loud. The music and lyrics revealed his truth, and for the first time, he felt completely free. When he finished the last note, Michael remained still for a few seconds, his eyes still closed, absorbing the silence that had taken over the auditorium. He slowly opened his eyes, fearing the worst, perhaps laughter, perhaps murmurs of disdain. But as he looked around, he saw emotional faces and fixed gazes directed at him. Even the classmates who once teased him seemed surprised, almost in shock. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a single clap that echoed throughout the auditorium, and within seconds, the place erupted in applause and shouts of support. The audience stood up, applauding intensely and sincerely. Michael looked at his mother, who had tears in her eyes, and at Miss Turner, who was clapping with a proud smile.
They really heard. They saw me.
As Michael left the stage, still stunned by the recognition he had received, he crossed paths with Tyler, who was waiting for him just outside the stage with a confused expression. It was clear he hadn't expected Michael to do so well, and for the first time, he seemed at a loss for words. Later, in the hallways, Michael noticed a change in the attitudes around him. Many classmates who had previously ignored or mocked him now greeted him, some even complimenting his performance. Amy and Chris, who had also teased him before, came over to talk to him.
Hey, Michael. I didn't know you were that talented. It was amazing.
Seriously, man. You surprised everyone. The music was intense.
Michael nodded, accepting the compliments with a modest smile. For the first time, he felt seen and respected by his peers, not for something superficial, but for something genuine and profound.
They finally saw who I am, not the person they thought I was.
At the end of the event, Michael returned to the music room, now empty and silent. He sat at the piano, running his fingers lightly over the keys, but this time without playing. He knew this was only the beginning of something bigger in his life. Everything he had faced, all the humiliations, doubts, and fears had led him to this moment.
Music gave me something that no one else could, the courage to be myself.
At that moment, he heard footsteps and turned to see Miss Turner, watching him with a smile.
Congratulations, Michael. Today you didn't just play music, you touched people's hearts.
Michael felt deep gratitude for her and for everyone who had believed in him, especially his mother, who had always quietly supported him. He realized that what mattered most wasn't winning the competition or being the best musician, but finding his voice and sharing something true.
Music was my truth, and I finally showed it to the world.
He knew this was just the beginning. Michael waited anxiously in the auditorium, surrounded by the other competitors and spectators. The announcer stepped onto the stage, holding an envelope with the final result. There was absolute silence as everyone waited, and Michael felt his heart pounding almost deafeningly. But as he waited, an unexpected calm settled within him. Not just simple tranquility, but the feeling that he had already achieved what truly mattered. He glanced at the audience, where his mother and Ms. Turner sat side by side, exchanging knowing looks. Michael felt a wave of gratitude. He knew that, regardless of the outcome, he had done something remarkable.
Winning would be wonderful, but what I've achieved today is worth more than any prize.
Finally, the announcer opened the envelope, smiling before announcing the winner's name.
And the winner of this year's talent show is Michael Evans.
The auditorium erupted in applause and cheers as people stood. It took Michael a few seconds to process what he had just heard. It was as if the world around him was moving in slow motion. He stood up, his face filled with genuine surprise, and began walking toward the stage amid applause and cheers of encouragement. Each step felt surreal, but the warmth and support of the applause were undeniable. As he climbed onto the stage, holding the trophy, he felt that he was finally being recognized for who he truly was, not by a label or prejudice, but by the talent and effort that had always existed within him.
This is real, and it's proof that I always had a value they never saw.
The announcer approached him, handing him the microphone to say a few words. Michael felt a mix of nervousness and gratitude, but he knew that, just as on stage, this was a moment to show his truth.
I don't even know where to start. So many times I doubted myself, because it seemed like everyone around me did too. But today, I realized something that goes far beyond this trophy. I learned that when we stay true to who we are, the world finally listens.
The audience was silent, each word resonating as a lesson for many.
Music has always been my refuge. And today, I want to thank everyone who believed in me, especially my mom and Ms. Turner, who gave me the strength to keep going even when everything seemed impossible. This award isn't just a victory for me, but proof that we all have something unique to offer. Thank you.
Michael's words drew applause, and even some tears from the audience. He looked at the trophy in his hands, realizing that it represented not only an achievement, but also the triumph of a journey that had transformed him. As soon as he stepped off the stage, his mother and Ms. Turner ran to him, both with eyes brimming with pride and happiness. His mother hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face.
Michael, you were amazing. I knew there was something special inside you, but seeing you overcome yourself like this, it's more than I could have imagined.
I always believed in you, Michael. Today you showed the world what I already knew.
He hugged them both, feeling immense gratitude for all the support that had brought him to this moment. He knew his mother had sacrificed so much for him, and Ms. Turner had been the first to see the potential no one else recognized. It was the perfect moment to thank those who had loved and believed in him unconditionally. As he walked through the school hallways the next day, Michael noticed how everything seemed different. Classmates who had previously ignored him now greeted him with smiles and sincere compliments. Tyler and Jack, who had often mocked him, approached with somewhat embarrassed expressions.
Hey, Michael, I know I wasn't nice to you. What you did was out of this world. I'm sorry for everything.
Michael looked at Tyler, and seeing the sincerity in his eyes, he nodded.
I think, in the end, we all have something to learn. Thank you, Tyler.
The interaction was simple, but for Michael, it represented something much bigger. He had transformed not only how others saw him, but also the way they respected him. At the end of the day, Michael returned to the music room. He sat at the piano and began playing the same piece he had performed at the competition, letting himself be enveloped by the melody that had helped him so much. Each note seemed to echo differently now, as if the piano were also celebrating his victory. This time, he wasn't playing to prove anything to anyone. He was playing for the pure love of music, the love that had always sustained him and now gave him even more strength to continue. He closed his eyes, letting the music carry him, imagining the next steps he would take, knowing that new opportunities awaited him.
This is my truth, and it always will be. No matter where I go, I am Michael, and music will always be my voice.
He played with the peace of someone who knew his own worth, regardless of others' opinions. He knew that this journey was only the beginning and that with music, he could reach horizons that once seemed impossible. Weeks passed, and Michael continued to be known at school as the boy who became a legend. His performance was talked about and remembered for months, inspiring other students to pursue their own dreams and fight against their insecurities. He was an example of overcoming, someone who showed everyone that behind shyness and humility was a unique talent and an unmatched determination. And so, Michael moved forward, keeping his passion for music alive and finding more and more opportunities to express his talent. He had won the respect and admiration of everyone, but above all, he had won himself. What did you think of Michael's journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.